So this is Luke chapter 24, the scripture for May 15th. Every gospel account of the resurrection opens with women as the first to arrive on the scene at Jesus' tomb Sunday morning. While the rest of the details differ slightly between gospels, each of them has women functioning as the first preachers of the resurrection. This was in a cultural context where women were not considered reliable witnesses, which makes this an extraordinary commonality between Gospels. In fact, in my mind, for my money, this is one of the most convincing pieces of circumstantial evidence for the resurrection. If the Gospel writers were fabricating this set of details, then there's no way that all of them would have chosen to have the first eyewitnesses of the empty tomb be women, even if somehow they conspired together, which lay aside for a second how that would have made their accounts much more similar than they already are. Even if they were to have conspired together to do this, they wouldn't have chosen women. One time, back when I was maybe 8 or 9, my family was playing a car game called Alphabet. This is a game where each person tries to use road signs and other things that you see on the road to find every letter of the alphabet in order. Some of you may have played variants on this, but particularly because we didn't use license plates and we didn't usually use moving objects, typically Q would be a bottleneck. There was one time where I found a Q in a word that looked like bank, spelled with a Q instead of a K. Not banquet, but bank, B-A-N-Q. And I was asked at the end of the game, because nobody else had found a Q, I was asked once I won, well, Joel, where did you find Q? I told my family the truth. And to this day, they make fun of me. It wouldn't have been a good lie. That's the situation with these women. If it may seem kind of quaint or kind of trite to use a game as an example, but if that's going to be a bad lie in a game, something where the stakes are so low, why on earth would you lie about something when the stakes are so high that's going to possibly compromise your account? It doesn't make sense. Luke is also the only gospel writer to include in full the walk to Emmaus. There's something beautiful, I think, in this walk to Emmaus about the power of word and sacrament in the life of disciples of Jesus. Jesus teaches them from Scripture and then breaks the bread, and suddenly their eyes were open and they recognized him. This is what the church is called to do, to direct people's attention toward Jesus. Immediately, the disciples go all the way back to Jerusalem, probably about a 6-mile walk at that time, and I'm sure they got back in a hurry. Now, I imagine the scene where everybody's gathered together, and these disciples are telling, these two disciples are telling the rest of the disciples about their seeing Jesus, and then suddenly Jesus appears in their midst. I imagine this as similar as when Gandalf the White returns in The Lord of the Rings. You may remember that Gandalf was in the Fellowship of the Ring and got in a fight with a Balrog, and then falls into an abyss and isn't heard from again. He was Gandalf the Grey at that time. But then returns later on in the hour of need as Gandalf the White. There's stunned silence at first when Gandalf comes back, followed by an acknowledgement that the being before you is immensely more powerful than you knew. And I think in that moment, you realize you're standing before some sort of God. In the case of Jesus, it's true. In that moment, Jesus charges them to bear witness. And later, he ascends into heaven, entrusting the work of evangelism to those who followed him. I wonder, who was it who first shared the gospel with you? That's all for Luke chapter 24, and that wraps up our study of the Gospel of Luke. On Monday, the 18th, we'll be beginning the book of Acts, which is the second half of Luke's account of the life of the early church. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.